Greetings. What's going on, everyone? This is Chris Dixon, and I am back with another episode and discussion here on the Tunnel Vision Podcast. Hope all is good and well with everyone. On this particular discussion, I will be building from Baal Kadmon's book, Jinn Magick, How to Bind the Jinn to Do Your Bidding. I pretty much want to share with you all some of the things that Baal Kadmon had to say on the Jinn concerning their history and origin. He also goes into detail on some of the different classes of Jinn. So I'm going to talk about those particular things on this particular discussion. Just like I did with Corin Hargrove's book, Practical Jinn Magick. So this is pretty much a book review on Baal Kadmon's book. And I'm going to also do another follow-up video and share another Jinn Magick ritual template utilizing one of Baal Kadmon's rituals and his particular approach, so to speak. So that's going to be the follow-up video. But for this particular discussion, I'm just going to build on what he had to say on their origins and the different classes of Jinn and things of that nature. All right, so let's get right into it. So starting with the introduction. Since Jinn are not devils and demons, the only corollaries we can come up with from the Western traditions are beings such as fairies, goblins, and even extraterrestrials. All those nature spirits and elementals are considered jinns to some. Whether fairies or extraterrestrials are in fact jinn is not for me to say because I really don't know. When I interact with earth spirits, I do not have a predefined notion of what they are. They are earth spirits. As far as aliens are concerned, I have to believe just on a statistical basis that we aren't alone in this universe. But in the end, it is up to the reader to determine this. The Jinn, like humans, have genders, although they can shapeshift into anything they want. The male counterpart is called Jinni, spelled Jinni, and the female is Jinniyah, spelled Jinniyyah. So far in my own practice, I think I have been encountering Jinni. It's not always easy to tell, unfortunately. I could have very well been working with Jinniyah. In the end, it does not really matter. As I mentioned, Jinn and humans live very much side by side. Supposedly, they also might outnumber us as well. A saying ascribed to Muhammad, the founder of Islam, states, God divided the Jinn and the humans into 10 parts. One part makes up the human race, and the other 9 parts is made up of the Jinn. What this tells me is that they are everywhere. And after my experience with them, I believe it. This is very interesting, what I'm getting ready to read. Marriage between humans and the Jinn. As odd as this might sound, there are accounts of Jinn and humans marrying. Stories abound, and quite common ones at that men have married Jinniyah and women marrying Jinni. The Islamic theologian Ibn Taymiyyah, 1263 to 1328, reports humans and Jinn have gotten married and have had children as a result of their marriage. This, I'm sure you can imagine, is not condoned in Islam, nor is marriage of any spirit to a human in any religion for that matter, at least not in such a direct manner. And this is very interesting because you can read about a similar story in the book of Genesis, as well as Enoch, elaborating on this as well. When a certain group of angels left the celestial realm, known as the Watchers, when they came to the physical realm, they had intercourse with women, with humans, so to speak, and it pretty much created a race of beings known as the Neptilium. But pretty much, what they really created was a hybrid species, so to speak, part human and part angelic. Some people would say part extraterrestrial, so to speak. So there is truth when it comes down to humans having the spiritual blueprints of different entities, whether they be angels, whether they be daemons, whether they be jinn spirits, or even the fae or fairies, so to speak. So there is truth to this particular concept when it comes down to humans and spirits, so to speak. And I can also bear witness to that based on my own personal experiences, working with spirits, channeling spirits, working with my spirit guides. It is true, that humans do have the spiritual blueprints of different entities and spirits. And this can also play a part in your ancestral bloodline as well, which will help you understand why you're drawn to certain systems of magic, so to speak. So based on, what types of spiritual systems and traditions that your ancestors, practiced and abided by, a lot of that followed into the next generations, okay, down to us, so to speak. So that's one of the reasons why you're drawn to certain systems of magic, whether it be Ifa, Palo Mayombe, Santeria, Native American shamanism, Eastern mysticism and magic, which is, Jinn Magick. Some people work with the fairies, very heavily because they have the blueprints of the fae in them, so to speak. So it's very interesting when you're talking about the relationships between spirits and humans, okay? Because when it comes down to your physical body and just overall the human ego, it's not who we are, okay? We're divine beings that incarnated into a physical body, to experience humanity, okay? So you're not this body, all right? So the more you start to deal with magic and become more adept in your practice, you will learn, your spiritual blueprints and lineage, okay? So just like you have ancestral lineage, you do have spiritual lineage that connects to, a particular system of spirits, all right? So there very much is, truth to this particular concept, okay? Moving forward, the mortality of Jinn. Something else is very interesting. Jinn, like humans, do die. Regarding how long they live is not quite clear. They mirror us in so many ways. Perhaps they could have similar lifespans or perhaps slightly longer. Our lifespan is based on certain genetic and environmental conditions. Since the Jinn do not have bodies such as ours, perhaps they have some kind of ethereal genetic code in which epigenetic factors trigger quote-unquote spiritual diseases. One thing is clear though, they do get sick and die. How this is possible is yet unknown. Where do the jinn reside? Folklore mentions that jinn tend to live in places that are either unclean or abandoned, such as bathrooms, cemeteries, and ruins. How they actually live in these places is not known, since they have elaborate communities and it would seem difficult that they would live in such places. My theory is that they may haunt these places but live on Earth, but in a parallel dimension. This harkens back to certain Earth spirits, although they might live in the forest or the rivers. They clearly do not live in the physical aspects of the forest and river, but in some otherwise unseen dimension within our own and within those very aspects of nature to which they are mostly connected to. What kind of abilities do the jinn have? The jinn have a vast array of powers we do not have. What we seek to have, they already have. One of which is the ability to move at the speeds that can only be comparable to the speed of light, or at least fast enough that, as the Quran said, a twinkle of an eye. In the Quran, chapter 27, verses 30, 39, and 40, recounts of the King Solomon's interaction with a specific jinn. It appears Solomon needed something quickly, and this jinn promised him it would be done with great speed. And when it comes down to King Solomon, there is a text that was not included in the Bible known as the Testament of Solomon. And this particular text talks about how King Solomon was a master magician / sorcerer, and he was given this magical ring with the hexagram on top of it, known as the Seal of Solomon. And this particular ring he used to bind the jinn, okay, to help him build his temple, okay. That's another story for another day. I'll talk about the metaphysical and occult understanding of Solomon's temple. But it showed how powerful King Solomon was and his particular control over the jinn spirits. And this specific ring is the one that I use when I'm doing my rituals, utilizing Baal Kadmon's book, okay, because he utilizes the concept of binding, the jinn to a particular item, whether it be a gemstone or whether it be, a ring, so to speak. So King Solomon, is highly looked up to in the occult, far as his example of being a master magician, okay. Let's continue to read. As I mentioned earlier, they are adept at shapeshifting into any form they please. They seem to love appearing as a black dog, but have been known to manifest as cats, donkeys, and camels, amongst other animals such as a snake. But what is interesting is that when they come as a snake, they might be good jinn. It is said that jinns who embrace Islam often show up as snakes, and that Muhammad forbade the killing of snakes because of this. There is one caveat though. If the snake did not leave your path or your home after pronouncing Allah 3 times, then it is bad jinn. It is only then can you kill it. They have myriad other powers, such as bestowing favors to all kinds unto mankind. We will touch upon that later in the book. Do the jinn have free will? The jinn, according to Islamic lore, have free will and can make their own choices and need to live with those choices, especially choices of religion. This baffled me the most. Jinn can actually be Muslim, Jewish, Christian, etc. Since the Quran is the holy book of Islam, it is easy to understand that it would say that jinns should embrace Islam, but they can also embrace other religions. Within the Quran, it states that the jinn too have spiritual messengers that either led them stray, or led them on the right path. Quran 6 verse 130 states, "You assembly of jinn and mankind, did not there come to you messengers from amongst you, reciting unto you my verses, and warning you of the meeting of this day of yours? They will say, we bear witness against ourselves. It was the life of this world that deceived them, and they will bear witness against themselves that they were disbelievers." Clearly, they too have similar beliefs. The Quran goes on to quote jinn directly in Quran 72 verse 11. "There are among us some that are righteous and some the contrary. We are groups having different ways," and it says in quotations, "religious sects," quote unquote. It certainly can't get clearer than that. Interestingly enough, the devil or Iblis, who was a jinn himself, has powers over jinn who not only taunt humans, but taunt other jinn. There are parallel heavens and hells for humans and jinn in which they are rewarded or punished for their misdeeds. It's within this free will that makes it interesting to work with them. We will cover that, but before we do, let me describe the various different types of jinn. The different classes of jinn. In this chapter, I will discuss the 5 major types of jinn. These 5 are the most common. There are more, however, but they are mostly from local legends and folklore. So the first class he talks about is called the Ifrit, spelled Effrit, which means to rub with dust in Arabic. Some say it is in fact a persona name after the root word Afritan, which means to create. I believe Afritan is the proper definition. This class of jinn is known to be very intelligent and are usually rising within societies very much like humans. The Ifrit tend to haunt subterranean places and caves. They can manifest as either demonic or as good-natured. They are effective in magic, but you must be careful because they are often known for being conniving and manipulative. They know human nature a bit too well and know how to push buttons, but they are also great at getting things done, and when you ask them to do something, they are often quite effective. In the Quran, it is said that King Solomon is said to use this class of jinn to do various tasks for him. We will cover that in the next chapter. The next class is the Marid, spelled M-A-R-I-D, and this means rebellious in Arabic. This class is often depicted as being rather large and have a very imposing presence. This was the class of jinn that Aladdin supposedly worked with in the 1001 Arabian Nights. They tend to respond best with rituals that involve bodies of water or water in general. They are wishful, fulfilling genies. The next class is called the Ghoul, spelled Ghoul. In Arabic, this name means to seize. This class of jinn is generally troubled, and as their name suggests, have monstrous personalities and do not have a decent, good-natured bone in their bodies. They love places like graveyards and are not fond of humanity and are very hard to control. They can inflict serious harm. We will not be calling on them in this book. It is just too dangerous even for the most adept magician. The next class is the Vitala, spelled Vetala. He could not find an exact definition of the name. This class of jinn are interesting for many reasons. They seem to be a class of being that was borrowed from the ancient Indian traditions and can be found in the Yogini Tantras. They are supposedly vampiric in nature. They are said to possess humans who have recently deceased. This possession halts the decay process, so in a sense, the body becomes a kind of walking dead, a zombie as it were, but will look alive and well. They are also superb shapeshifters and use that ability often. To those they have rapport with, they bestow psychic abilities of all sorts. They are considered somewhat neutral in temperament. They can appear both good and bad to the person looking to control them. The next class, and the last it goes in on, is the Sila, spelled Sila. Could not find an exact definition of the name. This class of jinn is safest to work with since they tend to be looked more favorably to humans. They are considered rare, but that has not been my experience with them. They seem to readily come when called. If they decide to manifest in front of the magician, they often show as female. Since they didn't actually manifest in front of me, I cannot say if this is true. They are considered to be the best of the shape-shifting jinn. Their intelligence is unrivaled amongst the jinn classes, and therefore more can be expected of them. As I mentioned, they like to interact with us, and therefore they will cross the veil without much hesitation. Despite this, you still need to be respectful and on your guard, but do not because they have ill intent. It is just that, well, they are jinn after all, and can unintentionally cause harm. They can get over-involved, as it were. So those are the 5 major classes of jinn that he goes into detail on. The next thing he talks about are the 7 jinn kings that correspond to the 7 days of the week. According to jinn theology, the jinn are ruled over by 7 jinn kings that also corresponds to the 7 days of the week. This is important to note since we will be using the essence of these kings to create more powerful rituals. He doesn't use the 4 elder jinn kings that is mentioned in Corin Hargrove's book. You don't necessarily have to use the 4 elder jinn kings, but you do have to come through the 7 jinn kings, okay, before you can actually make contact with jinn, okay. You cannot work with the jinn unless you come through the 7 jinn kings, okay, or either the elders, okay, if you choose to utilize the 4 elders, okay. But you have to come through the kings before you can actually work with a jinn, okay. And the 7 jinn kings of the week are followed. Sunday, his name is Al Mudhib, okay. Monday is Murrah Al Abyad Abu Al Harith. Tuesday is Abu Mariz, okay, Abu Mariz. Wednesday is King Barkan, okay. Thursday is Shamhurish. Friday is Abu Hassan Zobaa, and Saturday is Abu Na Maimun. All right. These are the 7 Jinn Kings that you will be working with in this particular book. You don't have to wait until a specific day of the week, to do a specific ritual. Like, you don't have to wait until Friday if the ritual corresponds to Friday. Like, you can do it on a Monday. If you need to do a ritual on a Monday that may be associated with a Friday, okay, you don't have to wait until Friday. Okay, you can do it on that Monday. All right. So that's something to keep in mind. All right. The next thing that I want to talk about before I close out, I want to talk a little bit about the most famous jinn, Satan, also known as Iblis. Okay, and it is in Islam. As stated, the Islamic conception of Satan is named Iblis. He is not a devil, demon, or an angel for that matter. In this, they differ quite a bit from the other Western traditions. What Iblis was a jinn. Like the story of Lucifer, Iblis was a fervent and most loyal and most God-fearing spiritual entity in heaven. He was so holy and devout that he used to hold court with the angels. It takes a very rare spiritual being to have the ability to live in the angelic realms and not be an actual angel. To Iblis' dismay, he was about to be tested. God decided to make Adam. He made him out of clay, a substance that Iblis thought was beneath him. Iblis, in his curiosity, decided to see what this clay figurine was all about. Since Iblis was not made of a dense material, he was able to flow inside this clay body. This was, of course, before God had placed a soul in Adam. When God finally placed a soul into Adam, he asked the angels and Iblis to bow before Adam, not in worship, but out of respect for Adam, and by extension, God's creation abilities. All bowed with the exception of Iblis. I am sure this sounds awfully familiar. Iblis refused to bow down because he felt that Adam was beneath him, even by God's command. Well, as it goes, when you disobey God, you get in trouble. And that's according to religious, theology and tradition. But in all fairness, God did give Iblis a chance to make things right. Iblis continued to stand his ground. This resulted in Iblis being cursed until the day of judgment. When he realized the gravity of his curse, he asked God for a favor. This seems rather odd of him to ask God for anything after essentially spitting in his face. Iblis asked that God give leniency until the final day of resurrection. God grants this to him. Then Iblis, in another act of insolence, vowed that he would lead all of humanity astray. And you can see this in similar stories in the Bible, such as the book of Job. Not only does he vow this, he swears by the name of God. And God, very reminiscent of the book of Job, challenges Iblis to do this. Go and lead them astray, and that he did. Iblis from that moment on became the great Satan and adversary to humankind. So that's another interesting story. But looking at it from the left-hand path and occult perspective, and not from the perspective of religion, the concept of Satan as the rebellious one or the adversary is a certain frequency, that we as practitioners tap into, when we're going against the norm. You know what I'm saying? If you grew up in religion, especially, one of the three Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, you're pretty much taught, you know, to submit your divinity to a being that is outside of yourself. You know what I'm saying? And you have to submit your divinity to that particular being instead of looking at yourself, okay, and understanding that you are a divine being in a physical body, okay? There is no need to submit your divinity away or give any of your spiritual power away, right? So Iblis or Satan will represent the adversary or the rebellious, mentality of getting your spiritual power back, okay? Iblis is also looked up as a very powerful archetype here in the occult, to tap into and work with for spiritual transformation, spiritual evolution. He can help you with confidence issues. He can help you deal with any fear that you may have. So Iblis is pretty much seen as this military, Navy SEAL type of boot camp instructor. You know what I'm saying? He can be looked at as that particular type of being. So from the left-hand path occult perspective, Satan is not seen as this evil being that is on a mission to deceive mankind and to corrupt mankind. From the occult perspective and left-hand path perspective, he is seen as a symbol or figure of divine transformation on what it means to, tap into your power. You know what I'm saying? Because the fact of the matter is, it don't matter how much of a peace, love, and light person that you are or that you claim to be. We all have the energy of the adversary within each and every one of us. Okay, it's naturally a part of our nature. Okay, so when you look at the Baphomet symbol, he has one arm pointed up, the other one pointed down. The arm pointed up represents your highest self, okay, or the Christ aspect of yourself. The arm going down represent the adversary, okay, the adversarial aspects of yourself. All right, both are a part of us, okay. Both darkness and light are connected as one, okay. These two polarities are not at war, with each other, right? It's about understanding how to harmonize them, within us, and that is why we do shadow work. We work on our triggers, we work on our addictions and bad habits, and things that pretty much hold us back from becoming a much more spiritually evolved and mature person. All right. You can also see in certain pictures with Horus and Set, Horus and Set, their heads are connected. Set, his head is connected behind Horus, and that will pretty much symbolize that same connection between the darkness within and the light within, and them two connected as one. So that is how the concept of Iblis is understood in the occult. Okay, he is seen as that being of rebellion, so that you can get your power back, and you create the life and path that is conducive for you, so to speak. Um, that's pretty much all I wanted to add to the concept of Iblis. And that's pretty much all that I have for this particular episode. I'm not going to hold you all too much longer. Uh, so if you enjoyed this particular discussion, um, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Um, share with people, so I can reach, more people. Um, and that way my podcast can continue to grow. Um, that's all that I have for this particular discussion. The next episode is going to be the actual ritual template utilizing one of Baal Kadmon's rituals as well as his approach. All right, so look forward to that particular video. But I hope that you all enjoyed this particular episode. Continue the good work and everything that you do. Continue to stay on top of things in your personal life as well as your spiritual life. All right. And I will talk to you all on the next episode. Peace. Be safe.